All right, good morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Like Nutrition Radio, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, the stream, where our goal is to bring you some amazing people who are here to do, to serve and to give and to love and do all the things that we're about here at this show. And so today we have on Dr. Dolores Fazzano. I keep saying it wrong in my head.
Fazzino,
thank you. I'm getting the A and the I mixed up, and I do it every time. I did it this morning anyway, so apologies, but thank you so much for being here.
You are so welcome, Nikki, and thanks for having me.
You know, there's always some funky way I'm starting the show, so it just sort of goes that way. But anyway, I'm super excited to get into this conversation. You're doing some really cool, out-of-the-box stuff, which is what we like here. We want to introduce people to things that are outside of the conventional, and not that the conventional is bad, right? But that is a little outside of that there's more than what we know, which I want. That's what I want. I want people to hear what they don't know. That's not very deep, but that's what I want anyway. Let's open minds a little bit, right?
I completely understand.
I'm so glad you do. I'm not sure I do, but I'm glad you do. And what's cool, though, is you do come from a conventional background. And I love that. So, and I think it's so important to have an understanding and have an openness to both, because I think it's so important. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I do think it's important to have an understanding of both, so we are able to pick and choose or combine, which is an important piece of it as well. But I will stop there, and we always start the show with gratitude. I believe gratitude can change the world. I think it's a big freaking deal to wake up in the morning and just, for me, it's being prayerful about what I'm grateful for, and then giving me guidance through the day, and then going to bed being grateful, prayerful about what I'm grateful for. What I don't do, and I should do, is journal about it more regularly, but it is sort of that going to bed, waking up sort of place that I really love, just being thankful. It really is a big deal. So, what are you grateful for today?
I am so grateful that I got a great night's sleep last night.
Yeah, nice.
Because it's been an issue, and it's just like, it's like, every so often it's like, I feel like I'm going to bed later and later and later. And so to be able to go to bed early and like actually sleep, that was like, I'm so grateful for that, because sleep is essential for me.
It is essential. And sleep is one of those things that it can change. It just changes everything. If you have it or don't have it, it literally changes everything. And so I feel you. I sometimes don't sleep well, and it's a big deal. So especially when you want to be out in the world and be productive, and you've got things going on, you've got a new program coming out, and so there are all of these things that make that can be impacted by the lack of sleep or getting good sleep. So good for you. I'm glad you're getting it.
And what are you grateful for today?
Man, you know what? I'm going to say that something that I've been wanting to do for a long time is to buy a big stand-up freezer. This is going to sound really silly, but a really nice big stand-up freezer, and stock it full of meat. And that's what we're doing. We bought our freezer. We're in the process of buying our meat. We're going to buy grass-fed cow. We're going to buy a pig. Actually, I think a pig and a half. And we're just going to have it stocked. And I'm really excited about that. It's so nice to feel like you've got good, healthy food that is there for you. And I'm not going to the store and comparing prices and all of the things. It's just there for us.
And grass-fed beef, and we used to raise our own when I was a kid, so yeah, there's a big difference from the quality of what you get in the stores, especially these days. So
yeah, there is. It's interesting when we were looking around trying to find the meat. I'd gotten a quote for the meat, and then I went, I have to ask. It's got to be grass-fed. I talk about the importance of grass-fed basically every day. And it did raise the price, which is really frustrating, right? You know, it's it shouldn't raise the price just because it's been sitting on a pasture for 2 weeks longer, but it does. And so, but that's what we did. And I was like, honey, it's going to cost more money, and it's grass fed. He's like, well, this is what you talk about. It's not like we can actually just go buy a regular cow.
Yeah, you got to walk your talk, you know. Yeah, I get it.
But yeah, what's the point? And you know, I talk about how inflammatory a conventionally raised cow is, and what's the point in having that much meat if I'm going to sit here and eat it and just go, oh, it's just not healthy for me anyway? It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, so we're excited about that. So super grateful to be able to do something like that. I think it's really I'm really grateful for that. So let's do this. We like to start the show with some, you know, with your story. You know, it's relatable. How did you get to where you are? Because you are so unique in the way that you practice, in the way that you approach your clients or your patients. And so I would love to hear just how you got to this place of the healer that you are.
Oh, wow. Well, you know, this is really interesting, Nikki, because, you know, everybody has their story, and a lot of it stems from my childhood. So first of all, I was born an empath, intuitive, and highly sensitive person. And I'm a product of the 1960s, so my parents really didn't know what to do with me because I didn't fit into the conventional box of you know, kids doing certain things and stuff like that. I questioned everything. And being so sensitive, I used to feel things at a very deep level. Now, my mom, in contrast, was somebody who, her MO for anything, especially if it was emotional or sensitive, ignore it, it'll go away.
Oh, wow.
And for somebody who's like an empath, intuitive, and highly sensitive person, when you ignore it, it doesn't go away, it grows bigger. Mm-hmm. And I used to tell her it's not going away, it's getting bigger. And so that was interesting. So growing up, we weren't allowed to feel in our house because that was my mom's MO, and it was, I think my mom was uber sensitive and she just shut down because there were so many things going on that was her way of coping. And so I decided that I was interested in music, so I channeled all my emotion into music, and I really excelled at that. And I became a concert clarinetist. In fact, that's where my pathway was heading until I was about 16. And also in tandem with this, my dad, when I was in second grade, ended up having to have back surgery because he threw his back out and get a disc removed. And he ended up in the hospital in 1966 with a hospital-acquired infection after surgery. So he was, for a surgical procedure that, you know, he probably would have been home in 2 weeks, he was in the hospital for over 2 months, and he pretty much almost died. So, of course, that being in second grade, you know, it's a very, you know, age-wise, you're like 7 or 8 years old, so you're very informative, but it's like you're learning different things, and also you're becoming more aware of worldly stuff. Probably, you know, when we study child development and stuff like that, that's kind of the pattern that you see. But what was happening was that my dad, with this back surgery debacle, he did get better, but starting in 1970 to 1975, whenever his immune system got compromised, this whole sequela would happen again. He would have to go in the hospital, have to have major surgery because he was growing abscesses or pockets of pus inside his abdomen, and he would be in the hospital for like 2 months at a time. This didn't happen just once, it happened 4 times. So my childhood was like emotional roller coaster because I didn't know whether or not my father went to the hospital, he was going to come out alive.
Wow.
And just dealing with not being able to feel in a household, you know, you weren't allowed to express your emotions. I really excelled in music. So it wasn't until the 4th episode of this happening with my dad, and flash forward to 1975, the last episode, that the CAT scanner, which was the first piece of modern technology that came on the forefront. So the doctors at the hospital put him underneath the CAT scanner, and they found that where my dad's infection was stemming from was where he had his original back surgery in 1966.
Oh, no.
So with that diagnosis, they decided that how to handle this, the options were he would have to have a surgery called a spinal fusion. And in 1975, it was in its neophyte stages of development. It was just on the horizon of techniques to assist people. And it came with high risks that either you would be paralyzed, you could die, maybe you'd get better, and maybe you wouldn't. And my mom was at her wit's end by that, because this was the fourth bout of this in like 4 years, and having 4 children under the age of, between 12 and 16 at that time was a handful for her. So she was looking at other alternatives, because she really felt that Western medicine pretty much failed her with this, and so she decided that she was going to look for other possibilities, which she did. And of course, you have to remember, this is 1970s, not 1990s, where we have WebMD and all the electronic stuff. We had the National Enquirer.
Wow.
Okay, so my mom came across an article that was being featured on the National Enquirer of this minister from Carroll, Michigan, who had the gift of laying on of hands. And he had been doing that type of work for 25 years in 1975. So he had been doing it since the 1950s. And he was being written up to feature because he was able to assist his brother in healing from leukemia. And so my mom was like, it was like hope and whatever. My dad, he was the biggest skeptic, and he said, only if the surgeon allows it.
Oh.
And so, of course, my parents were in the hospital when they had that discussion. So my mom marched out to the nurse's station, and there was my father's surgeon sitting at the station, writing notes. And she announced to him, I'm thinking about having a spiritual healer come in to assist my husband with his condition. Would that be okay? Surgeon's writing, looks up, doesn't miss a beat, and says, sure, that would be fine. So my mom went back to the room to share this information with my dad, because remember, he's a skeptic, and was in agreement that the surgeon said it was okay. And so he was like, okay, I'll do it. So my mom, I don't believe 10 minutes went by, my mom went back out to the same nurse's station and announced to the surgeon, same surgeon who was sitting there, my husband agreed to have the spiritual healer come in to assist in, his healing. And the surgeon stopped what he was doing, looked up at her and said, what are you talking about? I never agreed to that.
Oh my
So my mom didn't share that piece of information with my dad. But this is where everything kind of lines up in an invisible way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just like whatever happened in that moment needed to happen. But the thing was, a month later, my parents were at their home. My mom flew in Reverend Holmes from Carroll, Michigan. We grew up in Connecticut. And my 2 grandmothers were there, and my siblings and myself. There's 4 of us. So it was really cool just being in the presence of this very humble practitioner, reverend practitioner, and he was a very gentle soul. And he noticed that as my dad was sitting, that one of my dad's legs was shorter than the other. Don't ask me how he knew this. We knew this because my dad had lifts in his shoe, but my dad was barefoot and no shoes were in sight. So I don't know how this man knew this, but he asked my father when he was seated to put both his feet up, and you could just tell there was a 1-inch gap between the longest and the shortest leg. And then he instructed my father to lower his legs, which he did. And then he started saying some prayers over my father. He touched his belly, like the solar plexus, and the top of his head, his crown chakra. And he started saying some prayers. And then after about 3 minutes, he said, put both feet up. And they were both the same length. My dad started wailing like a baby, like I've never ever witnessed before, because he was a skeptic. He actually needed to see something, he needed visual evidence that something was actually happening. For me, that moment changed my life forever, because I knew that it was no longer my mission to be a concert clarinetist, but to go into healthcare and bridge the physical with the spiritual and the invisible with the visible. Now, my dad had another 30 minutes of work with the minister, and then was instructed to go lie down and rest for, the rest of the day, because as we know now, when your energy field is open and a lot of things are going on, you're integrating and processing and actually recalibrating your physical body to match the higher frequencies of the energy that's been taking on. So there's a lot of changes happening in the invisible, but also in the visible. My dad slept for over 24 hours.
Wow.
And then a month later, he went back to the CAT scan to get a repeat procedure, and they found no evidence of the infection. He never had to have that surgery, the spinal fusion, and he never had to revisit that problem in his life. And that was well over 50 years ago, and he passed away about 10 years ago at the age of 80. So for me, this was my initiation, and I knew that this is where I needed to go, because there was more than what we could see and what we could possibly believe in. And of course, in the 1970s, this was all considered quackery.
Yep. Today it's woo, now it's quack, then it was quackery.
Yeah, and now it's really pretty much accepted.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Which, thank God, I'm here to witness, and I've witnessed the whole, thing. So it's been an interesting journey for me, because I've been pretty intuitive and dialed in from a very young age, and just witnessing the transformation of things. I just remember, as a young nurse in the 80s, I worked in intensive care unit before I transitioned into the surgery department. And, I would know things before they were actually going to happen. In fact, some of the doctors got, when I would say something, they said, Dolores, when you say something, we have to listen. Thank you. I appreciate that. Because I'm not going crazy, because it would manifest. Because it's just like, how do you know? I just know these things. I don't know. I can't tell you, but, so it was interesting. So, I'm so very grateful to have been on this journey for myself, and being in healthcare now well over 45 years. It's been a ride, let me tell you.
I bet.
And living through, I'm going to call it our first pandemic, which was the HIV/AIDS thing, because it was really a pandemic, because nobody knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And I just remember being in the ICU, and I was very naive at that time, because I thought Western medicine had all the answers. Until that happened, and I got to witness the protocol changing on a daily basis. And I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, nobody knows what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, was a huge epiphany for me. And how important it is that people stand in their power. Because we give that away so easily. Yes. And in Western medicine, or when you go to the doctor, you do that all the time. So
I see it on a regular basis, and something that I try to talk about with the people who I see. Well, because you can see it when they come in, you see their faces, and you just see that they feel so powerless, because there's so much going on. They don't know why. They've been handed from place to place and from doctor to doctor, and it is very disempowering. And my entire goal, and yours as well, is to help. For me, it's let's understand your body, let's understand what it's telling us, because it's always talking to us. So when we understand that, then we can start to work with it, because I fully believe that no matter what our situation, the body is so innately beautifully smart that it might, we call it dysfunctional, I think it's protective. And if we work with it, then it and start to understand it, then hopefully it should be a game changer, right?
Well, it is. And I believe that we are sovereign beings, and our body is wired to heal.
Yeah.
It has this innate ability to heal itself. Unfortunately, we have, over the whole existence of humanity, given pieces of that away outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're at a time in humanity's evolution where it's time to start retrieving those pieces, even if it's a slow process, piece by piece, because not only in this lifetime, but other lifetimes as well, what has happened is that something tragic happens to us. It's like a fragment of our soul gets lost in that time and place. And it's like a little belief or a thought, and it plays on a loop, and it's all unconscious, and it kind of feeds who we are and drives us. And so if you're ever wondering why you have repeating patterns, it's like probably there's something at a deeper level that got left in another time and place, and it's time to go back and retrieve that. It's like a soul retrieval shamanic type of thing, but it's so effective, and it works very well, because what happens too sometimes is that when you fracture off a piece of yourself in another time and place, many people always are like reliving that. Okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And it could have happened early in your childhood, but it's now, you're an adult and you can't understand why this is still happening. But the beauty of it is, like, sometimes there's a trigger in the present moment that triggers that whole memory, okay, or that whole feeling, and you want to blame that trigger, but it's not. That trigger is truly a gift, because it's allowing you to, instead of be reactive, be proactive and say, okay, this is interesting, I'm being triggered by this, where is this coming from? And then you're able to go deeper, and you'll find some really wonderful gold nuggets. And I think I want to share a story here, because this happened to me personally last fall. I had a colleague of mine at one of the hospitals that I practice at who committed suicide, which was so tragic. And I didn't know him that well, but I just so felt that grief so deeply that when I was able to sit with it, I went to another time and place in my lifetime, like 60 years ago, of something that had happened to me that I was able to heal and put in and come to peace with that and move forward. And it was like a game changer. So the gift in that for me was like when I saw his spouse, who's another colleague of mine. She's another physician, and I hadn't seen her in months. And she saw me and we started crying. And I said, I need to share one thing with you. I just want you to know that because of this, I was able to heal something that I've been carrying around for over 60 years. And I want to thank you for that. And so, I mean, that was huge. It was just like, you just don't know how things are interrelated, or how, something that looks so superficial like that, that's not even related to you, but triggers you at something at a deep core. So it's really important to pay attention to that stuff, because I feel we're in a time of massive personal healing that's going to allow us to go to our next levels.
I hope you're right.
I know I'm right.
Yeah, okay, good. Because I know that we're also sitting in kind of a crazy time. I think what I would really like, before we get too deep into this, because, well, I would like for you to explain empath, and I would like for you to explain highly sensitive. Those are two things that I think maybe most people know, but maybe not. And how, my understanding is they kind of go also maybe hand in hand. So I'd love for you just to explain that a little bit.
Sure. Well, being an empath is when you are able to feel things deeply, where you really don't have a boundary. Sometimes your boundaries are so, what we call enmeshed. I'm demonstrating with my fingers, okay? It's like when you lock them, that area where it's locked, it's what we call enmeshment. It's like you don't know where you end and something else begins, and you feel things very deeply, and it's like more of a boundary thing, and you take on other people's stuff as your own, not realizing that's the unconscious stance, to try to heal it for them and process it for them. It's exhausting. Sometimes you feel like you're going through 50 shades of emotion. And especially if you're an empath and you could feel, it's like you almost feel what that person is going through, even though it's not your stuff. It's like you take it on as if it's yours. So for people who are that way, it's really about learning how to use discernment with energetic boundaries. Now, a highly sensitive person is somebody who feels that, all their senses are, I want to say, heightened. It's like the sense, maybe there's a smell that, all of a sudden you smell that triggers something in you, or it is seeing something that triggers. It's like just being, there's a lot of triggers in your world, okay? And sometimes even tasting food is a trigger. What you're experiencing or witnessing in the world is a trigger. So it's like, I believe when you're highly sensitive, it's like all your senses are heightened and you're feeling things at a very, very deep level. In fact, it interferes with your ability to function, because sometimes I give the expression that sometimes it's too peoply outside, because energetically everybody's stuff is flying around.
Yeah.
And it's like, self-care for me is staying home because it's too overwhelming being out in society, even to go to the grocery store, or, for those of us who have to go into a hospital setting, it's like an energetic shit show. Because the energy is just flying, and it's just everybody's stuff is there, and blah, 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 and it's just like, and it's learning how to protect your energy field and to learn how to dial that down so you could function in society. So there's a lot of things that people can do. I think half the battle is just realizing that you are this type of person, and okay, now that you know you are, now there's things you could do. For some people, and I know myself, the first 30 years of my life, it was just like, I couldn't understand. I thought I was like suicidal and depressive, because it was just like all this energy, I didn't know if it was mine or somebody else's. I was taking it on as mine, and it wasn't. Okay. So it was about, once you're able to see that and discern that, it's like you start getting your energy back, because it's not being pulled in multiple directions. So I hope I explained that a little better for the audience.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I appreciate that. And so what you had said earlier is you realized with this healing of your dad, that you knew that your direction was healthcare in a spiritual way. So you went into healthcare as a conventional medical clinician, right? A nurse practitioner?
I'm a nurse practitioner, yes.
Yep.
But at the time I was a nurse.
Okay.
I didn't get my nurse practitioner until the late 90s, but yes.
Okay. So you were in the hospital, you did surgery. How did you move into what you're doing now, where it's more of the energy practice?
Well, I think, Nikki, you have to realize everywhere you go, here you are.
Yes.
And the thing is, if you're that energetic being, and you've always been, it's like it just goes with you. So I think it was, realizing that I played on the fringes of woo-woo all the time. And, being able to see things that other people weren't able to see. It's just like I didn't, and the other thing too, for me, working through a lot of my stuff was about being seen and heard. Okay, because so you add that element onto it back at the time and place that it was. If you were going to be seen and heard for that, it was just like you almost wanted to tower away, because you didn't want to be labeled, judged, criticized, or whatever. So the thing is that you just keep moving forward, and it was just automatically happening. It was like when you're connected to your intuition, you're getting this information and wisdom that is the truth, yet you just don't know how to translate the truth into the third dimensional reality of what was going on, because people were just seeing things in black and white, and if it wasn't evidence-based, it didn't exist, and all the other stuff that they throw in there in 3D reality. And there was so much of that power play that people would just I speak for Western medicine, because that's the area that I play in. There's so many people that give their power away to something outside of themselves. And so for me, it's been a really enriching playground, because I get to witness a lot of what people's behaviors are and how they could possibly shift and change that to something different, because it all starts with us first.
Right. We have, it's as simple as, we have control over our emotions, right? Nobody else does. And so it's a very, it's like I said, a very simple example, but I sometimes, every now and then, will have to tell myself that if I'm in a bad mood, it's up to me to fix it. It's not up to anybody else. So I would say that it's that way with most things, that we may give our power away, but it was up to us, and we know we can get it back. We can, take control of the way that we're feeling and control the way that we're, approaching certain situations. So anyway, I love that. One of the things that you talk about is being an energy whisperer, which I love.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that name was kind of given to me by some my clients, and so what we mean by energy whisperer, if energy was a language, I would be extremely fluent in it. So we have to remember, everything is energy. What you and I are both looking at, all the items in your office, all the items in my office, even our physical bodies, are dense demonstrations of energy. Okay. Now, that's, if you want to look at the analogy, that's like the tip of the iceberg, what you can see. Now, below the surface of the iceberg, what you can't see are your thoughts, your beliefs, your connectedness to yourself, the ancestral lineage, the dimensional stuff that's going on. This is all energy, and it's under the surface. It's something we cannot see because we can't tangibly feel it. Now, if you're sensitive, you might be able to feel it. So those things are like radio waves, okay, in the ethers. You can't see those. You can't see radio waves. You can't see cell waves or 5D waves or whatever. But that's what that's what thoughts, beliefs, and emotions are. And whether or not they're being experienced or not, they are pockets of energy, okay? And like for emotions, for example, we in this country have had a anti-being emotional type of thing, where we're not allowed to feel, or we've been programmed that it's not safe to feel. And so what happens is that we try to control that. So that's like a blockage of energy. Say, for example, you're really angry, and you're the type of person that, oh no, I can't feel that, I got to internalize it. So it's a pocket of energy, and it kind of goes in your energy field, and over time you do that for enough of years and decades that it finally trips over into your physical body and starts raising holy hell with your physical body, and you create a disease, or maybe cancer, or whatever. And so that's what happens. It's emotions, when they're trapped and not experienced, they're pockets of energy that need to be experienced. So this is all under the surface, okay? We know that there's a link between your emotional health and your physical well-being. And we do ourselves a huge disservice when we are, and I just did an episode on my podcast about toxic positivity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you think you could be Pollyanna and everything's beautiful and stuff like that. And those people, they're distracting themselves from going to where they need to go to heal that. Okay?
Yep.
And it's like, you're here on Earth to have a human experience, and part of being human is having emotions. You need a physical body to experience your emotions. Did you know that? Yeah, you do.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, and so many of us once we dip our toe into the pool of emotion, we go into our heads, and we're trying to like play whack-a-mole to control it so we don't feel.
Yeah.
Right? So, case in point, yesterday I went out and I came back and I was feeling really sad, and I couldn't really understand why. So I decided I was going to sit with that instead of trying to like push it away. And I sat with that, and in a matter of an hour or two, it went away. It moved through. So what I'm saying is, like, just give yourself the grace to sit with whatever you're feeling without projecting it onto somebody else, okay? Just sit with it, because sometimes it is the unconscious stuff within ourselves that's coming into consciousness. So whatever the sadness was probably unconscious. Now it's moving into consciousness, and once it moves into consciousness and you experience it, it moves on quickly.
So, question for you, and just pure curiosity, when you say sit with it, I'm curious if you mean like you physically sat in it for a while, or you continued on with your day and just let it be.
You know what? I continue. Sometimes I do sit with it.
Okay.
Sometimes I just allow it to be what it is, and just, instead of trying to push it away, just allow it to be, because I think our normal tendency, anything that's painful or uncomfortable, we want to keep at bay. And I feel it's an opportunity when you sit with it and witness it and just be with it, but don't become it. Difference, okay? Don't become it. Just be with it and just nurture it and love it up and appreciate it. It's just a part of you that fractured off in another time and place that wants to be called home. And when you're able to do that, it's like you'd be surprised how much of your energy you get back as well.
I love that.
So circling back to the energy whisperer, that's what it is. Because when I work with clients, it's like they start talking, and then I get the sense of what is going on. And, I'll share with them and saying, something I believe happened at a certain age, and this is what I'm being shown, and, does this resonate with you? And, a lot of times it's like, yeah, it does. I said, okay. So it's not about healing it for them, it's showing them where it is and unraveling that so we could teach them how to heal it for themselves. Because I'm all about teaching people to tap into that innate healing ability that is their sovereign right, that over time and place, either consciously or unconsciously, they've given that power away to something outside of themselves. So it's teaching them how to trust that intuitive part of themselves.
Yeah. So would that move us then into what you're calling self-advocacy?
Self-advocacy. It's about standing in your power, basically. And it's about really trusting your gut, your intuition, your higher self, whatever you call it. It's still that innate wisdom that each one of us has. I don't know if you're aware of this or the audience is aware of this. We have like a higher self, which is our master soul that is on the other side. When we incarnate, only a fraction of that master soul comes into this incarnation. So we have all access to this, our higher self, which is our master soul, to gain all this access and wisdom. So I feel it's really important just to tap into trusting your intuition and allowing yourself to be led by your intuition, okay? Your intuition is going to tell you the right next steps for you, not your spouse, not your kids, not your neighbor, not your doctor, but you. And it may be counter to what you're witnessing or experiencing in the periphery, but it's the absolute right thing for you. And when we've all had those gut feelings about things that we should be doing a certain thing, but when we ignore it, we learn, by experience, we wish we listened to our intuition, right? So that's what I mean. It's just like trusting that no matter what is going on in your external. This is how you create more certainty in your life in, quote, uncertain times, because there's, an energetic, I call it the energetic shit show. It's It's like
Yeah.
this. It's like you're the inside of those old washing machines. You're that thing right in the middle, and the spin cycle spinning around. It's like that thing is calm and centered in the middle, but everything's whooshing around, and it's just like it's scream worthy. It's like you want to go.
Yeah.
Like get me off the ride, but it's about creating that certainty within ourselves, because Nikki, everything starts with self first. And a lot of times people say, well, I want to have this, that, and the other, well, it's like, okay, you want to have this, that, and the other. What's the energy of this, that, and the other? Is that the energy that you're carrying right now? Probably not, because you don't have it.
Right.
Energetically, you're probably vibrating here, and what you want is vibrating here.
Yeah.
So guess what? Ship's passing upward,
Okay. Yeah.
raising your frequency. So it's about learning how to trust that intuition, following that intuition, and no matter what's going on around you, just put your fingers in your ears and go la 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 la, can't hear you, to the external stuff, and just focus on what you need to be doing for your next steps.
So I have a question, and I hope that I can say this well enough, because what I think happens a lot, because we all have, our different beliefs and views and religions and all of these things, right? And so I want to ask you this question from a Christian perspective, because I want to make sure that I'm following what you're saying, what I believe to be the case, right? So when you talk about our higher self, to me, that is the Holy Spirit, right? And that's who I would reach out to for guidance, and that's who I would talk to for guidance. And I'm going up here, but the Holy Spirit is here, right? And so that's it. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. For some people, it's the Holy Spirit. For some people, it's their God spark. For some people, it's their intuition. It's whatever, it's that inner voice that you hear, whatever that is. It's usually your intuition. Some people, it shows up like it as a gut feeling, or maybe they feel it in their chest. It'll be somatic too. It'll show up maybe in your mind. I don't know. Everybody's so uniquely different. But it's learning how to tap into that and not comparing yourself to other people. Well, they have it. It's just like, no, this is going to be unique to you.
Yeah.
Because you are unique. You're not like everybody else.
Thank you for that. Yes.
You were made, and the mold was broken after that. So.
Oh, I love that. I don't say the last part. The you were made and the mold is broken is amazing. I think that's so good. But that's another thing that I am. Every time people ask me, this is super simplistic, but how much protein should I have? How much fat am I supposed to have? I'm like, I don't know. How much are you supposed to have, right? I can look at general guidelines, but we can look at your genetics and have a better understanding of what this means. But you are different than everybody else. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm going to just piggyback on it. You could have, look at epigenetics and stuff like that, have a risk of being, if you had a family history of bad cardiac stuff or, people passing away young, that doesn't mean that that's going to happen to you.
Right. Amen.
So, yeah, it is. It's like, I really don't like to label people with things, because I'm going to share another story because it's just right in my... I'm from the personal vault of Dr. Dolores Fazzino. I'm my primary care doctor's worst nightmare.
I bet you are.
So it's just like, because, I live in that world, I kind of play in that world, and I bridge another world with it. But what happens is that just because you have lab work that's out of whack, and, in my case, it was like my lipid panel and cholesterol and stuff. Big family history of that on my dad's side. It's like, and all the family lived until their 80s and 90s. So, I went to my primary care doctor. She looked at my labs and she totally freaked out. She was projecting all her angst onto me, even though I knew that this wasn't a problem. And I'm aware of that, but how many people are not?
Yes.
When people project their stuff onto to you, like their angst and stuff, they don't have something, and then you start creating it for yourself.
Yep.
It's a huge disservice that a lot of physicians do to their clients.
Agreed.
So, long story short, she said, you need to go to the cardiologist. You're like a time bomb for having a stroke. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm not, because my blood pressure is low. My heart rate's in the 60s. And I also had, at that time, Doppler studies of all my major arteries. There was 0 plaque anywhere. And so she said, we need to do a 12-lead EKG. Fine, I did that. And she said, you need to go see the cardiologist. I said, okay, I humored her. So when I went to the cardiologist's office, they wanted to know why I was there. I said, because I'm humoring my primary care doctor. She seems to think I'm a walking time bomb, and I know I'm not. So went there, and of course in cardiology, what they do, it's more of a statistic type of thing. They plug in like your blood pressure, your heart rate, and family history, and all this other stuff, and they come up with a percentage. And the cardiologist said, I don't know why you're here, because you only have a 7% chance of having any of this. Thank you very much. And I said, let me share one thing with you, what I just shared with you. You guys have got to stop projecting all your angst about a condition onto the patient. I said, you do them a huge disservice, because that person may not have anything going on, but you riled them up so much that they're starting to create that for themselves.
Yes.
It's got to stop. So shortly after that, I fired that primary care doctor, and I have somebody else who's much more aligned. So, but
it's going to epigenetics and creating, and helping people understand the power that we have. Epigenetics. I'm not a specialist in it, but it is my jam. It is the coolest thing ever, because it is what gives us power, right? Epigenetics is, I have the control, I do what I do, and that creates epigenetic expression. And so same with our cholesterol. I mean, that is probably a huge soapbox for me, but it's the most misunderstood, one of the that set of biomarkers, which is incomplete and not as deep as it should be. But we set people up for failure by telling them your HDL, your LDL is too high, we're going to put you on a statin. And they're like, none of it makes sense. And they
tried to put me on statins. I was on them like 10 years ago for 2 years. It did absolutely nothing. And I decided that I didn't want to pay Big Pharma buku bucks every month. And plus, I didn't know what the long-term side effects were of this medication, and I chose not to.
Good.
I listened to my intuition on that, and I have no regrets.
And I think it's important for people to learn how to listen like you do. And it goes back to giving away our power when we may feel something, but we're like, okay, I'm going to let you tell me what to do, because you're the expert. And there's a lot of education and a lot of knowledge. We have to work together as a team.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm a firm believer in telling people that, trust your instincts. If it's almost like picking out a doctor is like dating. If you're not getting along, or they're not listening to you, it's like next. It's just like you could fire your doctor. It's okay. And it's important, because you need to get somebody who is going to listen to you first of all. Is not going to think you're crazy, because first of all, you've lived in your Taj Mahal your whole entire life, your body. They're only seeing you for like 10 minutes a year.
Yeah, and you are one of however many thousands of people that they see, and they're putting you in the same box as everybody else.
Right. So, I think what's interesting too that people need to realize, remember we talked about the iceberg, the tip and the below? The tip of the iceberg, you might have a disease that is common to a lot of people, but your pathway and how you got there is going to be uniquely different to you. And they don't even address that, which is, I think, hugely important.
Well, it's that on top of, they want to cover it up with drugs, but there's no looking at it. Did this come from emotional trauma, physical trauma?
Exactly.
Did it come from generational trauma, right?
Exactly.
Yep. On top of, all of the things that we talk about here, the toxins and the pesticides and the EMFs and all of these things that are just bombarding our bodies day in and day out, that are, it's really hard for it to handle. But we have to find people who are part of our team, our healthcare team, who are there to support us, advocate for us, be there to help guide us through, and to look at the whole picture the best we possibly can. So then if I'm the one who has the team, they're helping me dig out of whatever hole that I have gotten myself into that can happen.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, it's and the beauty is, Nikki, right now, I think the timing is correct for this. In, like I said, I've been at this for over 45 years. It is, I've waited 45 years to witness what I'm witnessing now. And it's well been worth the journey, because it's, the stuff that my thoughts and stuff, probably 50 years ago, they would have laughed at me. Mm-hmm. But it's the absolute truth. And so it's all about timing. And I think humanity is so ripe for picking right now with this whole concept that, you are in control. You have the power. And, because we've been duped into believing that somebody else always had the power. It was a control thing, and it was, an abuse of power, really. Mm-hmm. So we're in really exciting times. I think a lot of amazing things are going to happen as people awaken to the fact that, okay, I have options and choices. Yep. And I could step into my power now.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. It makes me really excited.
I do. I'm like, it's like, ooh.
Yeah. Just kind of giddy, fun.
And we got to sign up to be here at this time. This is even better.
I know.
I know 20 years ago I was thinking, what was I thinking? Right. It's just like, what?
Well, it's good to kind of be on that, that wave that is progressing forward in all of these really good ways. It's grateful for what you're doing. So I want to make sure, though, that we talk about, what you do, like literally what you do, how you work with people, how people find you, all of the things, so people who want to learn more from you can.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I work with people all over the world virtually. Being virtual is just as, I think it's sometimes even better than being in person, because it's all energy. When we read energy, sometimes the further away you are, the better it is, and more precise, believe it or not.
Interesting.
I work one-on-one. I also do group things. I'm an author. Like I said, I have a podcast that's called The Dr. Dolores Show on Inspired Choices Network, and we broadcast over 350 platforms internationally, so I could be found almost on any modality. And I'm really about empowering people and helping them take their power back. So I do one-on-one coaching. I also help people who are maybe having a challenging time with their health, like maybe they have a cancer or something, and help them with that, so we could look at the underlying issue of what created that, so we could start healing that, because we don't want to have a recurrence.
Right.
Because when you don't address the underlying stuff, it's like playing whack-a-mole at the fair. You do the chemo and radiation, you get better for like a year and a half, and then all of a sudden you have a recurrence. So it's like looking at what contributed to that and making some changes within yourself, if it's lifestyle, but also mind changes or mind thought changes and stuff like that. So I help people with that. Also, what I really am passionate about is so many people are waking up right now, and what I mean by waking up is that they're realizing that the external world is no longer supporting them in the way that they feel it should. A lot of people right now are transitioning out of jobs, relationships. Maybe they need to move or pick up place and they're being sent someplace else. What we have to remember is that when that stuff happens energetically, it's no longer in alignment with who you are, and you're creating a void for the upgrade to come in for something better. So it's about teaching people skills to allow them to embrace that and take their power back. So I'm all about encouraging people and empowering people so they can live their best lives. So if it's, a transition in life right now, or if it's a disease process, and it doesn't matter how old you are. It's just like those are the people that I work with. And you could reach out to me through my website, drdoloresfazzino.com. And for the audience, if you are the type of person that has a brain that travels all over the place and you can't stay in the present moment, I have a free downloadable meditation. It's a grounding meditation that keeps you in the present moment. So
that's great. I think that's the biggest thing that I hear is when I tell people I need you to pray and or meditate, right? I just need you to be still. And they're like, I can't. I don't know how. My brain doesn't shut off. I'm like, nobody's brain actually shuts off. It's always a practice. So, you can't say you can't, because then you're just putting a hard foot down. You're not giving it a chance, because it's a practice. Right. But I like the way that you say that, because it does reach those people like, no, I can't do it. My brain doesn't shut off, which, yeah.
It's, it's 5 minutes. You just sit and listen to it, and it's a guided meditation. And you will feel different, because you will actually feel what it feels like to be in your body.
I love that.
It is such a subtle thing, but when you're fully present in your body, it's like this awareness of expansion is available to you. It's like you could be right here, but you could be in another part of your house energetically. But you're grounded in this, instead of being in the ether is just, and I think, Nikki, we could both agree, when you're in your body, you're in your present moment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
When you pop out of your body, you're in your mind, you're worrying, you're contemplating tomorrow, thinking about yesterday.
Yes.
Your list of to-do things just goes on, and you're not in the present moment. You're like in another time.
Yeah.
So it's about, what it is about right now is just being fully present in the moment. Mm-hmm. This is how you're going to be able to maneuver through what we are all going through, and cutting yourself a lot of grace and self compassion.
I love that. Your meditation, did you say it's a free on your website?
It's
Is that what you said?
free.
Okay.
It's on my website. It's a pop-up that comes up. Just sign up for it, because it's I think it's a game changer, and it gives you a taste of what it's like to be in your body.
Okay.
It's a whole different, and it's only 5 minutes. And you could do it for 5 minutes.
Yes. Well, and that's another thing that I try to tell people. Just start with the 5 minutes. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. Do it in the shower. I don't care. Just do it.
You know what? You have to start. And sometimes it's just taking baby steps.
Yeah.
Nikki, there's this analogy that, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So it's like, you know what? It's like, it's a big thing. Mm-hmm. You take baby steps.
Yep. Well, I mean, the baby steps are the most important thing, really the most important thing that we can do, because it's too hard to take big steps. So it's just that little tiny forward movement that in time creates that massive jump. So
absolutely, yeah. You have to show up.
Yes.
The universe will help you.
That.
You have to show up.
I love it.
You have to do your part. You have to show up. It just doesn't happen. It's free will. You've got to show up.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you so much. It was such a great show. Great time having you on. I love all that you're doing. I do hope that any of you who are watching this will reach out to Dr. Fazzino. I don't know why. It just flips in my head every time.
That's all right.
Anyway, apologies for that one. But anyway, reach out to her. This is really amazing stuff, and I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Well, Nikki, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you too as well.
Of course. So we are streaming live here on KUHSdenver.com every Thursday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, where you can find us. We've got really cool guests on. Sometimes it's just me. And but the goal is always to be of service, to bring you hope and inspiration and education and any of the things that we can do to help you to grow. That's what we all want, right? We all want to grow. So you can find me at tastelifenutrition.com. You can find me all the socials or Taste Life Nutrition. You can go to the website and fill out a free assessment. I'll reach out to you personally and we'll chat about it and see if there's something I might be able to help with. if I can't, I've got a really big web of people who I know who are really amazing at what they do, who I love to refer to. So feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to chat. You can always look also for, if you are a woman or if you are a couple looking to plan for pregnancy. This is not already pregnant. This is planning for pregnancy. Reach out. I'm happy to chat about that as well. So soulful conception really is, we're talking about epigenetics. Soulful conception is taking the time to prepare for pregnancy today because it will impact generations ahead. And I think that it's so powerful and it's so empowering, and it's good stuff. So reach out. We'll chat about that. And that's what I got. So thank you everybody for being here, and thank you so much. And we will check everybody out next week, Thursday, 10 a.m. on KUHS Denver, the stream. See you later. Wait 1 second. We'll turn. Whoa. Okay.